Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and in this video I want to talk to you about a new series I would like to start running over here on YouTube, and that is all about one of my absolute favourite things to do in the hobby, which is painting tanks. So like 10 years ago now, I painted up this Stormblade for a Golden Demon and I had a load of fun, but I think I've learned an awful lot in the intervening decade. I've painted many more tanks, and I've also taught tank painting classes all over the world, different styles of painting the tanks, military modelling through to more traditional sort of wargaming, and I just love it. And I would love to try and bring some of the stuff that we do on those classes, I'd love to try and bring that to YouTube. And to do that, we're going to need longer format videos. We're going to need to do multi-part series, and I know YouTube isn't that keen on that type of thing, but I'm quite passionate about it and I think you guys will enjoy it. So I need your support on this. I need to know if this is something that you want to do or want us to do. And to that end, I want it to be a collaborative project. So as well as the comments, there will be a channel open in our Discord. So the link's down in the description to that. It's free to join the Discord. That'll be dedicated to the Super Heavy Challenge, and I will be in there and I will be more than happy to answer questions. I'm not going to be doing like in-depth one-on-one feedback with people. That's available as a separate thing. But I want to be able to, if you've got questions about, what paint could I use for this? Yeah, let's answer it. I'm finding this bit tricky. Can you help? Absolutely. And we'll go in there and we'll learn together. I would love you guys to, if there's certain products and things that you've enjoyed using that you think are really cool for this, let us know. Share that knowledge and let's improve together and broaden our knowledge together. Now, although it's called the Super Heavy Challenge and I'm going to be doing it on the new plastic Fellblade kit, everything we're doing is applicable to basically any sort of normal tank. It's just not as exciting. I can't really make that a title. So if you've got, a tank, but if you've got a big tank, have a bit more fun, right? So let's use some big tanks for this. But if you've got one sat in a box or built and not used, use that tank. You do not by any means need to do the same colour scheme that I'm doing. That's again not the intentions here. I want to focus in on one or two things with each series that we really sort of deep dive on more, spend more time on, necessarily deep dive, but spend more time on showing how it's done. And for this one, I want to focus on the armour panels themselves. So painting the panels and weathering the panels. We'll cover everything else, but those are the ones that we're going to spend the most time on. So if you want to follow along with me, then down in the description, you'll find our affiliate link to Element Games where you can pick up your own plastic Fellblade. But as I say, if you've got a big old tank somewhere in that hobby room, get it out, get it built, and let's paint it together and have a ton of fun, doing it. I'm confident the series will work. I think it'll be a 2 or 3-parter. And the reason I'm calling it is the challenge is my intentions are at the end of the process. Let's call it a month from next week. At the end of the process, anyone who's finished them, we'll do a little culture paint episode, send the photos in, we'll share the photos, we'll have a good chat about it, and then we'll chuck some names in the hat. And anyone who's finished it, we'll do some giveaways for. We'll put some giveaways out and for 1 or 2 people from that. Just have a bit more fun with it all. So in this video, I'm going to take you through just basically the prep. So building up the kit, any little tips and tricks or processes that I use, I'll leave in so you can see what I'm doing. It's probably nothing groundbreaking here, but things like sub-assemblies and stuff like that I've found helpful given my my experience in doing it. But do let me know, as I say, in the comments if there's anything you'd particularly like me to cover. My intentions are, if this one is successful, then we'll do walkers, we'll do super heavy walkers, we'll do grav tanks, we'll do old proper real world military tanks, anything like that. I'd love to deep dive into using things like brass etch and extra accessories to make our tanks sort of micro detailed. All of that I'd love to do over the next few years on the channel. Let's do 3 or 4 tanks a year, something like that. I think could be absolutely awesome. So I hope you guys are excited about this as I am. Let's do it together, let's improve together, and let's just make some massive cool looking tanks. So once I got the sides glued together, it was time to start doing a bit more serious thinking about sub-assemblies and basically where we can put the different colours and elements on the model. And by sub-assemblies, I mean pieces that we aren't going to glue in before we paint them. We may paint them in their entirety and then attach them, or we may paint parts of them and then attach them. So in this case, I figured I will probably want to do something cool with the doors. It seems such an obvious place to do it. So I've just blue tacked those in place so that I can prime them at the same time as the rest of the model. Basically decide what I want to do. I'm giving myself an out, once I've thought about the schemes. Glue-wise, you'll have seen me pop up sort of the tools I'm using. There's not many. The only thing I think I forgot to show was a toothbrush. But I like to use two different types of glue when I'm building my plastic kits. So I use Revel Contactor, which is the stuff you see me using there with the needle. So this is a thicker, it's not necessarily thick, but it is a thicker plastic glue. So polystyrene cement. So it's just good at holding things together. And we can also, as you'll see a little bit later on, we can use those sort of slightly thicker properties of it to just sort of splooge it out between gaps to help fill and deal with some join lines that we inevitably get on the plastic kits. I've got to say though, the fell blade was an absolute dream to build. I'm not impressed with the amount of swirls and jetting and stuff that's on it, but that seems par for the course with any large GW kit nowadays. But the actual how it was cut, and pieces to build it just flew together so easy. So yeah, really, really wicked. I've got to give props to that. Like, it was a fun build. There wasn't anything intricate about it, and I like intricate builds as well. I don't like overly complicated, but I like intricate ones. Like, I love building things like Titanicus kits. It's just so clever how they've managed to create it. But this was just brilliantly put together. Did make me think, why is a rhino perhaps so complicated, given it's not really much different to this? But yeah, anyway, it's a bit weird doing videos where I'm not painting. Just got to sort of talk over the building. But yeah, the Revel glue gives you plenty of work time as well. So if you don't quite line something up, like I wasn't there, you're not going to be damaging anything. The only thing to be aware of really when you're using plastic glues, if you've mainly worked with super glue and stuff before, is that if you do pop your finger over them, you will leave fingerprints and things in the plastic because it melts it, which is a bit frustrating. And then the second glue you'll see me using here is the Tamiya Extra Thin Cement. Now, I've just noticed that they are bringing out a no smell one, whatever the correct word for that is. What on earth is the correct phrase for that? Low odor. Version of this, which I'll be picking up, but I've got a few pots of this to get through first. But you can see you can just kind of pin wash it into seams, and it's not the strongest join, which is why I use the Revel for actually gluing it together. But when you've got areas like this, you see where I was able to just sort of snap the piece in because it was held together with sort of tension, and then you can just pin wash in the extra thin Tamiya, a gentle squeeze, and it just does a fantastic job of filling in those lines. I think we'll probably do it again here with this one. I never did the resin fell blade either, so this will be my first ever fell blade, which will be fun. I'm building it as I'm going to paint it as a Death Guard one. I put the poll up on Patreon Discord the other day about what colours people would like to see, and the two that were most requested were white or off-white and green. So I thought, well, I can either do 40k Dark Angels scheme, which I was very tempted by, or I can do Death Guard, and I'm going to go for that sort of white Death Guard. I really like off the cover of Flight of the Eisenstein and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to go for. So here's one of those cases where I mentioned that you can use those properties of the slightly thicker Revel stuff to help deal with some of the join lines. Now, on a lot of the Heresy tank kits, perhaps a lot more so than on this, to be fair, and I wonder if that's just the sort of evolution of the sculpting of them. There is a very obvious panel line or join line where the top panel meets the side panels, and it bugs me, like that line. And I think it needs a decent feel. It doesn't need to be flawless. Absolutely nothing needs to be flawless. It needs to be whatever satisfies you for building a model. But for me, I need that line to not jump out as being there. So I like using that the Revel stuff to just squeeze in there, push it together, and then we get a little bit of excess poke out, and that then gives us something that we can file down to help hide that join. Now, speaking of sub-assemblies and areas of the tank that we can paint different colours without masking off necessarily, this was lovely. So this is the turret. So the bottom half of the turret, as you can see here, is just one piece. So you build the top just as per instructions, leave the bottom off like this. It'll be very, very easy to reattach later. You see there's no areas that's going to bother us for attaching it. And it's just a super easy way for us to paint that bottom ring, I guess, for want of a better word, a different colour. So that's easy. So here's a a better example actually of what I was talking about with using the glue. So the barrels. Now, I was very tempted to just replace the barrels with some brass tube, but as I say, I would rather focus in on one or two different things on each project to make the main content of the video around. And I felt like, let's start with the painting side of things, and then as we go on, we can get a bit more complicated with using different parts and stuff. So I thought just use the plastic kit for this. But you can see there I'm squeezing the two pieces together, because when we get the plastic kits, the things like the turrets and exhausts like that will tend to be in multiple parts, often with a nasty seam sort of running down them, or join rather running down them. So squeeze it together. The excess glue comes out. Then I'm going to use the Tamiya Extra Thin, just kind of washing it over that to smooth those bumps out. But that's now sort of filled in that gap. By smoothing it out with a Tamiya, it's just a little less work for us to do when it comes to sanding. But the polystyrene cement, obviously it melts the plastics together. So with a little bit of work, we should be able to make it look perfectly serviceable. If this is a competition piece, I would be doing more. But I think for a tabletop piece, this is more than enough for it. Now, I like to use, when I'm sanding, I like to use sanding sponge. I buy it, usually when I'm up at Element, I buy it, and it's Tamiya stuff that I've got. So I've got, I think, I've got 1,500 grit, and I've got, I think, 2,500 grit, something like that. And those are the ones I use, and it's just a case of sanding, really. I like using the sponges because obviously you can, you don't get the flat spots when you go over it, particularly if it's a curved area. So you just keep sponging, keep sanding, and more sanding, and more sanding, and more sanding, and more sanding. And then you get to the point where I think this looks pretty good. Certainly enough for me. Say if it was a competition piece, I'd probably be using brass. But if I wasn't, I've gone a step further. I'd probably go in with a scribing tool around the little collar parts. But that's all stuff we can talk about on future tanks if there is the interest for it. I really do hope the series is successful. I'm wanted to do it for ages. It felt like a good time. Now, I mentioned a minute ago the whole jetting and the swirly thing. I don't know if you've noticed this on your plastic kits, but there's an element of inevitability on it to do when you have larger areas. But it's a production thing. But I find that my tanks they're covered in it nowadays. And rather than have a cry about it, I just figure out how to deal with it, essentially. And the issue that I would have is if you left those swirls in there, whilst they don't feel any different, you would prime over the top of them with, say, Chaos Black or something, and you would get this weird orange peel texture where those swirls were in. And because I like to airbrush and stuff as well, like it's just rubbish. Like there was no getting around it. So I have done a ton of different things to try and get rid of it. And in the end, this is what I have settled on. So once I've built the tank, I will then go over and give it a proper sanding, basically all over. So this helps if I've gone a little bit overzealous with some of the glue. This helps just tidy that up a little bit. But also I'm just essentially buffing every single surface with the sandpaper. And I started with the 1,000 grit or 1,500 grit, whatever it was, and then I've moved on to the finer grit as well. So sort of polishing it. I'm not sure if I've used it in this video, actually. I've recently, my buddy Todd gave me these sort of glass polishing sanding sticks, which are super cool, mainly for use on things like Gundam kits, but I've been using them a bit more on my plastics. And I bought a kit from Wargames Atlantic recently, and I needed to send it back because there was an issue, and they dealt with it. It was really good, but they also sent me some of these glass sticks as well. So I have quite a lot of them now. So I was like, well, I better start using them. And they were pretty cool. But perhaps I'll talk about those a little bit more in some future videos. I don't care about the bottom of the tank. It will get primed and that's it. I don't paint the bottom of my tanks. Can't be bothered. But here's what we finished with. So we had the sanded main hull with everything on. The turret in two pieces. Now I glued the gun barrels into this lower ring simply so it was easier to hold them, and I figured I could paint that lower ring easily, mask it off with a bit of cling film or whatever, which we'll do in the paint video, and then I could have something to hold on to while I was painting the barrels themselves. I've gone for the quad heavy bolters in spite of the fact that, yes, I'm aware the sculpt of them has the gun moving through the magazines, but there's this whole thing about Death Guard having like the holy trinity of like bolter, melter and flamer and stuff, so I wanted to I wanted to get that on here. So I've gone for quad heavy bolters. The sponsons that they're held in, I've just blue tacked those pieces in place. This is easily the trickiest sub-assembly, and then there's some pipes we'll have to glue on later, but it's having done a load of them, particularly on things like Spartans and stuff, I found this is the simplest way. The exhausts I have left separate just because it will be easier to get in and paint them how we want. So just noticed that I hadn't scribed out the centre there. And then the fuel barrels at the back, whilst a lot of the stuff holding the barrels on is going to be the same colour as the hull and everything, the barrels themselves will be different. I will intend to paint them differently. It will just be easier. And because they're so easy to glue on, I can do that. And then I suppose the biggest thing left off is the tracks. And again, I'm quite messy when I paint tracks, and I find it easier to paint them off the tracks, off the tank itself, rather. Now, going back to the orange peel and stuff, so I've completely sanded the surface, say buffed all the surface, and then over the last 6, maybe 12 months now, certainly 6 months this year, I picked up a couple of different products, Mr. Surfacer by Mr. Hobby and AK Microfiller Primer, and you just give a light dusting of these over the model, and it will fill in all those micro imperfections. If there's anything that's not right, you can then sand over the top of that and give it another light dust over the top. And you can see what the difference it's made here. This is just one very light dusting of them over the two. I would say I prefer using the AK one. It has a slightly rougher finish to it, and it also doesn't smell anywhere near as bad because these things are horrible. They're very good, but they stink. And to that end, I would say, please be aware of things like sort of off-gassing and stuff as well with priming. So if you prime these and just leave them on your desk, like get some ventilation in your room, because they're still going to be giving off a load of fumes. I'm not going to tell you what to do health and safety wise, but that's certainly what I do because I find it very uncomfortable otherwise. The turret here, that's the AK one. As you can see, it's got a slightly more matte finish to it versus the barrels, which I've used the Mr. Surfacer, Mr. Primer, Mr. Surface Primer, something like that. You'll have seen it on there. It's a little bit shinier. But it's a absolutely amazing products, these microfillers. We used to use, 10 years ago or whatever, we used to use on the Forge World resin, we used to use Halford's car primer, but it's the formula for that changed. It wasn't quite as good anymore. So this on the plastic, this is perfect, this microfiller stuff. And as I say, you can just go over the top and sand it down if there's anything that needs doing. So you see I've missed a seam in there. That wasn't obvious. But as soon as you've got a little dust of that primer in, just get in there and sort that right out. So that's the tank all ready to go. Next video, say we will jump into the actual painting of it all, and I will talk about primer color and base coating and all the actual paint stuff in there. But I would really recommend sort of trying those primers and stuff out if you haven't before. As I say, it was something that bothered me a lot, was that effect. And actually, it's a relatively simple thing to fix up. So thank you to everyone who suggested them in the comments on those various videos in the past. So I went and picked up a few. I've tried them out for a good 6 months or so before speaking about it, because I wanted to see if they really did work for how I hobby. And yeah, they were both excellent. I would say the AK is probably a bit easier to find in most hobby stores. The Mr. Hobby products, you tend to find those more in stores that stock like scale model kits or Gundam. You'll often find those products in there. So yeah, if you've got any questions about anything I've done in here, guys, pop them down in the comments. To say, jump into the Discord, talk about what you're going to do, meet some new people. Let's go through all of this together. I really can't wait to kick this series off. I hope it's the start of a really, really good new, style of videos that we can bring to the channel going forwards. Let me know if you're keen. Let me know on things you'd like to see in this vein in the future as well. And yeah, I can't wait. So thanks ever so much for all of your support, guys, particularly over on Patreon. But if you can't support us over there and you're still watching the video here, then hit that thumbs up, drop a comment down in there. It all helps with visibility on the video and means we can keep on doing this type of thing. To get those tanks built, talk about the schemes, let's figure out some colours. Let's get cracking next week. So take care, and I'll see you next time.